Hi, and welcome to my 2025 reading journal setup. I'm going to try to keep things simple since I don't have a great track record with using and keeping up with my journals, but I really want to try to get into the habit of using it for 2025. This nameplate is probably the most complicated spread of the entire setup. I was inspired by some images on Pinterest and just drew in some books surrounded with flower doodles. The flowers are pretty simple and easy to draw. I'm planning to add the year on the book spine, so I left the books empty for now since I might be using this journal for multiple years. I won't know which years to cover until I fill this notebook, assuming I can even fill the whole thing. For the first spread, I'm just copying a setup I created earlier last year for my old and unused reading journal. I just gave it a basic title in capital letters and drew in lines for checkboxes. And then I began the tedious and annoying task of writing in all the titles of physical books I own that can be read as standalones. Honestly, I instantly regretted this idea. My hand started hurting before I even got to the fifth title, but I did have fun color coding the books by genre. I really love color coding. The idea behind the spread is to provide a reference guide to myself the next time I'm looking for the next book to read. But I didn't use the old spread at all, so we'll see how well this one works. I used a little bookshelf at the top as a key to keep track of which color is assigned to which genre, and left the right side blank to save room to add more books to the list in the future. And then decided to add some messy calligraphy to the title. All in all, this spread took me about 30 minutes to create, which is kind of crazy for how simple it is. I wish I typed out the 60 plus titles instead of writing them in by hand. It would have saved me a lot of time. For the next spread, I'm creating my series tracker. Again, I'm copying another layout from my old reading journal. It's just a list of series I need to finish or want to read, along with how long each series is. I freehanded the lines partly because I was being lazy, and partly because I wanted to be able to see exactly how long each series is in an easier way. I also have a color coding system for this spread, but this time it's for each year. Again, the mini bookshelf next to the title serves as a key. On the right side is another series tracker, this time just for the series I own in full, or at least mostly own, but haven't finished, so I would be visually reminded that I should make some progress on my physical TBR. Next is my index page in the style of an old library card. It's the last spread I have that can be used every year. I probably should have included it earlier, but honestly, I doubt I will ever fill this out. Still, I wanted to have it as an option, especially if I do end up actively using this journal. And now we're finally working on my 2025 spreads. I drew a similar layout for my 2023 recap and thought I made things easier for myself and set it up early. That way I can use it as the year goes and I'll theoretically have less work at the end of the year. I'm creating 2 progress bars for my 2 main goals of the year, to read at least 70 books and to read at least 4 books from my own shelves. Under the progress bars, I have some other goals I hope to check off, like reading at least 1 series and unhauling at least 5 books. I'm hoping I can check in every month or quarter and update this spread to reflect how well I'm doing on achieving my goals. On the right side of the page, I just created a simple layout to track books I buy and unhaul. It's really nothing special, but since I'm clearly struggling to read the books I already own, I want to keep track of what I'm adding to my shelves and see if I'm making any progress on letting some books go. The next spread is to satisfy my love of coloring and to keep track of my progress towards my reading goal. I just drew 70 boxes to represent my 2025 goal of reading 70 books. For the color coding, I decided to assign each month a different color with my Crayola Super Tips. I didn't film it, but I have a post-it note to remind me of which marker I used for each month. By this time, my hand is really starting to ache, so I decided to call it a day and finish the setup later. After a nice break, I'm moving on to my future log and my reading stats spread. They're both pretty straightforward. For the future log, I used the same style heading as the rest of the journal and drew in 12 boxes with room for me to write in books I'm looking forward to in the month they'll be published. I used the same color code system as the reading goal spread, and I'll use it again in the reading stats spread. For reading stats, it's just a simple table. I kind of wish I used a ruler so it'd be neater, but I was feeling lazy, so I free-handed it and ended up with a bunch of squiggly lines. You can kind of tell when I started to get bored and lose focus. For the headings, I have the month, the number of books read, the number of physical books read, number of ebooks, the number of rereads, the number of DNFs, the number of books read that I own, the number of books hauled, the number of books unhauled, the number of books bought, the amount I spent on books, the number of arcs read, and a space for comments. Hopefully, I'll remember to fill it out every month. But it also does feel a little redundant since I'm also tracking my reading with Storygraph and Notion. But it'd be nice to have these stats on paper. And using those platforms mean I should be able to easily backfill this table if I ever need to, which I honestly probably will. Next up is one of my favorites of this entire setup. And honestly, it's probably because I'd finally decided to find a ruler and put it to use. This spread just looks so much neater than anything I could create by freehanding it, and I love how neat it looks. On the left, I'm creating a reading tracker graph to track the total number of books and pages read every month. Technically, I'll just be copying the graph from Storygraph, but I think it'll be nice to have all my reading stats in one place, instead of scattered across various platforms. On the left side of the graph, I have the number of books read. For some reason, I decided to start numbering from the top, and of course I miscounted. I wrote 18 when it should have been 17, and it's the first of a couple mistakes I need to fix. I ultimately decided to just cover it up with a black circle with the same pen. I'll just write the numbers with the white gel pen later. I definitely needed some more caffeine while setting this part of the journal up. Clearly, I didn't learn my lesson, and started numbering the axis for the pages counting down too. At least I counted correctly this time. Too bad I can't say the same about when I was numbering the days of the month for the year in Pixel Spread. I probably should have taken a nap or a coffee break, but too late now. For some reason, I started numbering by counting down, even though that resulted in a mistake earlier. And of course, not even halfway through, I forget I'm supposed to be counting down and started counting up. Why was it so difficult for my brain to go from 24, 23 to 22? Instead, I went 24, 23, and 24 again. Note to self, I need to stop being lazy and do a better job when drafting spreads. I hate erasing, so I didn't bother numbering in pencil because I didn't think it'd be too hard to count to 31. But apparently that was too difficult for my sleep-deprived brain. Anyways, moving on. I ended up fixing that mistake the same way I fixed the one I made with the reading graph. But this time, I decided to only cover every other space instead of filling in the whole column. I just felt like it might end up too dark if I did it that way. Once I got that sorted, I used my ruler to draw straight lines. I wish I was able to find a longer ruler because having to line this one up twice in order to get a line long enough to draw out the columns took forever, and so did having to wipe off the ruler every few lines to prevent smudging. If I just free-handed the lines, I would have been done in maybe 5 minutes. Using the ruler took me about 15. The point of this year in Pixel Spread is to track how many pages I'm reading every day, if any. So for the key, I used a bunch of markers in rainbow order. That way, I should be able to easily tell if I've been reading a lot or not really at all. I'm curious to see if there are any trends in my reading. For example, are there times in the months when I tend to read more or less? Where is the amount I read totally random? And for the last and final spread of this reading journal setup, I have a book bracket. It's about all of my favorite books of the year. This spread took me forever, and I mean forever, to plan out. I kept drawing and erasing boxes and counting dots and repeating the process until I landed with this. Originally, I was just going to do the typical 12-month bracket, but ended up duplicating it so I could have a bracket that represents my favorites based on logic and another based on feels and vibes. We'll see how it plays out, if I even fill it out. Spoiler alert, I didn't. And here's the finished product. My reading journal setup is complete. I was hoping to keep it quick and simple, but it ended up taking me almost 3 hours to film. And that doesn't include the time I spent planning and preparing each spread. This notebook can probably hold at least 2 years of my reading journey if I can get myself to use it regularly, but we'll see. And that's it! Thanks for watching!